Hi, and welcome to Kitchen Safety, Cooking, and Food Spoilage, an educational class brought to you by Reach for Resources. I'm Emily Orr, and I'm the Director of Adaptive Recreation and Inclusion with Reach for Resources. We offer services in recreation, waiver case management, mental health, and community living here at Reach. If you would like some information on these services, please feel free to reach out to us. But on to our content for today. First, we're thinking about what kinds of dangers are lurking in your kitchen at home. There are probably more than you think about. All right, here I think if I click, then it'll help circle some of the dangers. This kitchen is kind of in a bad way here, so just identify some, take a second and think. All right, first we have an open cigarette here. That's a kind of a fire hazard. It looks like these burners are on in the back and there's no food on them, and then these are kind of smoking, so that's not doing well either. Leaving the oven open is not safe, especially when it's on. So that's another danger. The cat could be a falling hazard. Leaving your chemicals unlocked under the sink. If you have somebody who might be able to get into those, that could be unsafe. Oops, the microwave. I'm not sure what's wrong with it other than the fact that it's open right now. The toast looks like it might be burning. This outlet looks like it's very overwhelmed at the moment, so maybe not using so many plugins in the same place. I'll scoot over here. It looks like we have an open knife drawer and a knife on the counter as well. That could be unsafe. And a spill on the floor. Also, you could fall or be electrocuted from this extension cord on the floor by the water. So this kitchen is really not in very good shape. So we're going to talk today a little bit about how to keep your kitchen a safer place. We already identified that. All right. So here we are. Safety hazards are everywhere in the kitchen, so we want to stay alert. So we'll go through a bunch of different hazards and how we can maximize safety. Here are the basic rules of kitchen safety. First, you want to store your knives safely in a wooden block or in a drawer. There's lots of different ways that you can store knives, but preferably in a drawer or a wooden block out of reach of children or other people who you don't want access to the knives. I know I keep a lock on our drawer that you just push down, but it's kind of a child safety lock on our knife drawer. Don't cook in loose clothing and keep your long hair tied back. Don't cook while wearing dangling jewelry. Your bracelet could get tangled around pot handles, or your hair could catch on fire. So things that hopefully aren't happening to you, but just something to keep in mind while you are prepping food. I think probably like sleeves, getting caught, on something or getting dragged into something, that could be a hazard as well. So keep your pot holders nearby and remember to use them. Don't try to take out pans out of the oven without your pot holders, and sometimes even the lids of a pot on the stove can get really hot, so I usually use a pot holder for that as well. Don't let temperature sensitive foods sit out in the kitchen. So we'll talk a lot today about food safety and when it's safe to eat food and when you need to throw it away. Wipe up spills immediately, especially if they're on the floor, so you don't slip. Always separate your raw meat and chicken, poultry, or other birds from other items whenever you use or store them. So even in your kitchen or fridge, when you're storing your meats, they should be stored separately so that the juices don't leak onto your other foods. So that's called cross-contamination, and the harmful bacteria of the uncooked meat getting onto fruits and vegetables that you wouldn't cook necessarily. Wash your hands before handling food and after handling meat or poultry. And get a fire extinguisher for your kitchen and know how to use it. So lots of different tips on kitchen safety. So we're going to get into these in a little bit more detail here. First, we're talking about knife safety. So we want to keep your knives sharp. Now, actually, you might think a dull knife is safer because sharp knives have sharper blades, but dull knives can slip and you can cut yourself more with a dull knife, more likely because of slipping than with a sharp knife. So keep your knife sharp. Always slice away from your hand and keep your fingers clear of the blade. And this photo here is a great way to hold your food so that your fingers aren't out flat. And then, you know, potentially getting a cut. So if you bend them, then hopefully you're kind of saving yourself there a little bit. Don't ever use the palm of your hand as a cutting board. It sounds silly, but you know, cutting even a simple thing like an avocado or a mango, sometimes people will hold those in their hand and cut them, but it really, you want to set it on a cutting board. When you're mincing, which is chopping things finely, you want to keep the tip of your knife on the cutting board and just kind of bounce it up and down. And this one's talking about this position here, about curling your fingers under and hold the food with your fingertips while chopping. Now, don't lick your knife. Even if it's a butter knife, it's not safe to really lick food off of the butter knife or any knife. Always use and secure your cutting board. So cutting board should have rubber feet to help it grip the counter. Otherwise, you could put a damp towel under the board while cutting so it doesn't slip. Don't slice things freehand over the sink, and if you drop a knife, just let it fall to the floor. Don't try to catch it. Just try to get out of the way if it falls. Now, what if you do cut yourself? Well, first you want to wash out the cut with soap and water. Apply pressure to stop the bleeding. You want to raise your hand above your head while you press the cut with a cloth. So just kind of elevate it and put some antibiotic cream on it and bandage it. If it is a really deep cut, it's definitely possible to cut yourself where you might need stitches. So if it doesn't stop bleeding or if it's really hurting, get checked out. All right, so let's talk for a minute about kitchen fire prevention, all right? Stay in the kitchen while you're frying, grilling, boiling, or broiling food. The leading cause of fires in the kitchen is unattended cooking. I have definitely stepped away and forgotten about food in the oven. I know it definitely happens, and if you are doing something and you turn off your timer and then forget completely about it, it could cause a fire. So just stay in the kitchen while you're cooking for safety and make sure you set timers to remind yourself. Be alert and don't use the stove or stovetop if you're sleepy. Keep anything that can catch fire away from your stovetop. So definitely, you know, your hand towels or paper towels or pot holders or anything like that. Don't store them on or near the stovetop. Remove as much moisture as possible from the food before putting it in hot oil. And don't put frozen foods into hot grease. And the reason is because water reacts with grease and it could cause a fire. So, or a lot of spattering, which could also hurt if you're getting hot oil spattered at you. So that's really a good tip. All right, let's see here. And the way I have this set up, I have to keep moving out of the way of the slides. Keep the grease at a recommended temperature, so this would be for frying. If you're frying foods in grease, keep it at the recommended temperature, and if you see any smoke or other oil smells, it's probably too hot. So turn off the burner and let it cool down. Heat oil slowly. Add food gently to prevent splatter, and keep a lid near the pan that you're cooking so that it's accessible if a fire does start. Because it would cut off the oxygen of the fire. So that would be a good way. If you're able to get the lid on really quickly, that could help. All right, so how do you put out a grease fire? Well, this is actually a good question because it is different than most other fires. Because most other fires, you'd want to just throw water on them, but grease fires are different and they react with water, so water would definitely make it worse. So how would you put out a grease fire if that is to happen on your stove? Well, you'd want to cover the flames with a metal lid and leave on the cover until it has cooled. Definitely turn off the heat source if you're able to get close enough to do that. If it is small and manageable, you want to pour some baking soda or salt on it to smother the fire, but only baking soda or salt, not flour, not baking powder. So there's a difference in all the chemical compositions of those items. Just remember baking soda or salt to help smother a grease fire. You can always use a fire extinguisher, but as a reminder again, don't extinguish the grease fire with water. It will make it worse. Do not attempt to move the potter pan outside either. So if it's already getting big and out of control, call 911. We don't want you to get close and put the lid on or put baking soda on it to try to help if it's already a large fire. But if it's a small and manageable fire, these are things you can do to try to put it out. If you're not able to extinguish the fire, here we go. Some more details on what you should do. Call 911, as you can see here. Get out, and you want yourself and your family members to leave as soon as possible to prevent injury or loss of life. Don't try to be a hero, and I really hope none of it comes to this, but we like to just cover everything and prepare you for worst case scenario here. Close the door as soon as you leave to help contain the fire, and call 911 as soon as you're at a safe distance away from the fire. And don't re-enter your home until the fire has been contained by firefighters. So I'm hoping that we don't have to deal with any grease fires, but I've seen them and they do happen. If you catch them early, usually it's not a 911 emergency, but if you don't know what to do or you do the wrong thing, like throw water on it, it could get worse and it could get out of hand really fast. So just stay calm and call 911. All right, let's talk about food safety now. So this is something that you probably have to deal with all the time, not like a grease fire, which is a rare occurrence. So here are some food safety tips. Always wash your hands with soap and water. Use warm water and wash for 20 seconds. Especially if you're in a public place, use a paper towel to turn off the faucet. If you're at home, you can sanitize your sink and your faucet handles regularly. It should be less of an issue, but you can use a paper towel or a towel to turn off the faucet. You want to sanitize surfaces before and after you cook. Wash with hot soapy water or a mild cleanser. Clean sweep refrigerated foods once a week. So I know we always do that on our trash night. If you live in an apartment, any night can be trash night. So just pick a night of the week that you want to clean out the fridge. It could be also recommended to do right before you grocery shop, so then you have more room to put your groceries in. So at least once a week you throw out any refrigerated foods that should no longer be eaten. So you can check the dates on things. If you can't remember when you bought something, it's probably too old. We'll go into some more detail, I think, on when to throw leftovers away and things like that. It's important to keep your appliances clean. Clean the inside and outside of all your appliances regularly and pay attention to the buttons and handles where your contamination could occur. So if you did have, chicken on your hands and then touch something, always make sure to wipe it off and clean it with soap after that happens. Rinsing produce is a really important step too when you're cooking. If you do skip that step, I would really highly recommend that you start rinsing your fresh vegetables and fruits under running water before eating. It can wash off contaminants and other germs. You know, the food has a long journey before it gets to your plate, and so it's been touched by a lot of people and been in lots of vehicles, and it's really just a good idea to take a couple seconds to rinse it off under cool water. Rinse before you peel things too. So a lot of times when I'm peeling, I'll rinse and then peel and then rinse again. You don't need to use a veggie wash. You know, they do sell those, but they're not really necessary. Sometimes when I'm washing produce, like I'll even wash a pineapple prior to eating it, or a watermelon. And the reason being is if there's bacteria on the outside of your watermelon or your pineapple, and then you go and you start cutting into it, the second you cut into it, any bacteria that was on the outside could now be on the inside. So I actually wash those with a tiny bit of dish soap before I eat them, but I don't use dish soap on other things like berries or anything like that. But everyone has kind of their own way on how to wash things. Really, just washing with water should be fine. They do have like scrub brushes or special sponges that are good for washing root vegetables and things like that. So I like those too, but really all you need to do is just give them a quick rinse. All right, we'll move on. Food safety tips continued. So you want to separate your foods when shopping. So don't put your meats on top of your fruits. Just keep them kind of in separate areas of your cart. You can put them in plastic bags, or just put them below on the cart, or you could bring some shopping bags with you and kind of put them in different shopping bags as well. All right. Separate foods when preparing and serving. Always use a clean cutting board for fresh produce and a separate one for meat. So that's a really important step, is you never want to use the same cutting board for raw meat and anything else. After you use it for raw meat, just put it in the dishwasher or wash it really quick. You can use the same cutting board if you're just doing veggies. If it's different veggies, that's fine, but never meat or seafood or poultry on the same cutting board. Okay, cook food to safe internal temperatures. So you can check the internal temperature of your food with a thermometer. And so if you don't have a meat thermometer, those are pretty cheap and easy to get. So just read the instructions on there. You can always watch a YouTube video on how to get a good temperature as well. Let's see. For safety and quality, allow meat to rest for at least 3 minutes before carving or eating it. 3 minutes is not very long. I feel like it'd be kind of hard to eat it within 3 minutes of taking it off the stove. And this is also talk about the food thermometer when cooking. So keep cold foods at 40 degrees or below in the fridge, and hot foods at 40 or above. And they're not safe to eat, when they have been in the danger zone between let's see. Oh, sorry. Keep it at 40 or 140. So 140 is for the hot. So if it's between 40 and 140, so that'd be between the fridge and cooking temperatures, also known as probably room temperature, right? If it's at room temp for more than 2 hours, then it's unsafe to eat. So if you're at a restaurant and you're going to bring home leftovers, but you're not going to be home within 2 hours of when you got the food, might be better to just leave the leftovers there. All right, and so we're going to talk more now about how do you know when meat is cooked. Use a meat thermometer. Looks like we have a video for you right here.
To ensure perfectly cooked meat every time and to avoid the consequences of undercooked meat, it's important to learn how to use a meat thermometer. No one wants day after surprises. There are 2 basic kinds of meat thermometers: oven going and instant read. Let's start with oven going. For larger meats, such as roasts, Use this type of thermometer before roasting. Get it? Oven going means goes in the oven. Stick it at least 2 inches into the center of the thickest portion of the meat, avoiding fat and bone. Put your roast with the thermometer in the oven to bake. When the thermometer reaches 145 to 155 degrees, it's dinner time. There's another type of thermometer that works just as well. Instant read. Tuck this guy in when the cooking's done. Place this thermometer in the same way, giving him 15 to 20 seconds to register the temperature. No matter which way you measure, using a meat thermometer is a must-do food safety step.
That was a great video on how to use a meat thermometer. So here's a chart on recommended safe minimum internal temperatures, and these are usually also found on your meat thermometer. I'm not going to go over these right now. You can just refer to them. You can always Google it if you're cooking and you forget how hot things need to be. Food spoilage. So we were talking about cleaning out your fridge once a week. So why do we refrigerate our foods, first of all? Look at that. Well, primarily because refrigeration slows bacterial growth. So this is kind of a bacterial culture, this photo over here. Bacteria exist everywhere in nature. They're in soil, air, water, and the foods we eat. When we have nutrients, moisture, and favorable temperatures, they grow rapidly, increasing in numbers to the point where they could cause some type of illness if there's too much bacteria. And they grow most rapidly in the danger zone between 40 degrees and 140. And some double in number in as little as 20 minutes. And so remember when I told you the danger zone between 40 and 140 is definitely room temperature. So anytime they're not in the oven or on the stove or in the fridge, they're probably in the danger zone. Can you always tell if a food is bad? And this is really helpful information, I feel, because sometimes you can tell if a food is bad. So this is just a progression of a lemon going from good to terrible. And I think just by looking, you wouldn't try to eat this lemon that's changing colors. But you can't always tell if a food has foodborne illness. Some bacteria can cause foods to develop unpleasant odors, tastes, and textures, so you will know. So sometimes you do know if you open up your milk and it smells funny, toss it. Not worth it. If something smells off or tastes different, definitely just stop eating it and toss it. It's probably not good for you to eat. Other bacteria, they're called pathogenic bacteria, can grow without detection. And so that's what I really like to point out in this part of the series here, is just that sometimes there's bacteria on food that you can't see, you can't smell, but it could still make you sick. So how do you store food in a fridge? Disclaimer, this is not my fridge. I am not this organized, but it looks wonderful. I wish I was. Hot food can be placed directly in the refrigerator. You don't have to necessarily wait for it to cool. You always want to cover foods to retain moisture and prevent them from picking up odors of other foods. A large pot of food like soup or stew should be divided into smaller portions and put in shallow containers before you refrigerate it. A large cut of meat or whole poultry should be divided into smaller pieces as well before refrigerating. And the temperature in your fridge should be 40 degrees or below throughout the unit so that any place is safe for storage of food. There is a thermometer inside your fridge if you're wondering. You can adjust the temperature. Raw meat, poultry, and seafood should be in sealed containers or wrapped securely to prevent the raw juices from contaminating other foods. I love how organized this fridge is. There's different bins that they even have it color coded, which is great. But they have different bins for different things, and their cheese drawer is very organized. Their produce drawer is very organized. It's wonderful. So let's talk more about that fridge maintenance that you do every single week. We want to keep it clean. If there is a spill in your fridge, let's wipe it up immediately. Just clean it with hot soapy water and then rinse. You don't need to use any harsh chemicals on your fridge. If you do let it sit, it's going to be harder to clean later. To keep it smelling fresh and help eliminate odors, you can put a opened box of baking soda on a shelf and just keep it in there, and that kind of helps keep the odor under control of your fridge. Avoid using solvent cleaning agents or abrasives and other cleansers that might have a chemical taste to the food when you're cleaning it. So really just, I usually just use dish soap and water, hot water. You can usually take out the shelves and drawers after you take food off of them, so that makes it a lot easier to clean as well. The front grill should be kept free of dust and lint to permit free airflow to the condenser coil, and several times a year the condenser coil should be cleaned with a brush or a vacuum cleaner to remove dirt, lint, or other accumulations to help ensure your top performance. And that's something that I didn't always know about. But there's an image there on the bottom right that shows you what that looks like. So throw things out. Throw out perishable foods that should no longer be eaten. As a general rule of thumb, for refrigerated storage for cooked leftovers is 4 days. Raw poultry and ground meat is 1 to 2 days. So I feel like if you eat something within 2 days, anything should be safe. Cooked foods should be 4 days. So this means, like, for raw poultry and ground meat, 1 to 2 days. I think that means when you go to the grocery store and you buy raw chicken or raw ground beef, you don't want it to sit in your fridge for many days before you cook it. So if you're not going to be using it right away, just put it in your freezer and try to take it out the morning that you're planning to use it, or a few hours before you're planning to use it to thaw. And there is a cold storage chart for different items. Let's see, here it is. And this is kind of when you should throw things out after they're opened or cooked or not cooked. So like, yeah, fresh meat, this is how long they'll last. Fresh poultry, 1 to 2 days. So you definitely want to get those in the freezer if you're not going to be making them right away when you get home from the grocery store. Things that are sealed, like hot dogs or lunch meat, usually you've got a couple of weeks, and a lot of times there's a best by date on those as well. You can check. But after you open it, you know, there's really not, it's not forever. You know, you have a week on hot dogs or 3 to 5 days on lunch meat after it's open. So it's something to keep in mind. Here's some more food storage times. I'll just leave these here. You can always pause if you have a specific question on how long things are good. But as you can see, nothing really goes too long over 4 days. So we just want to be going to the grocery store often and making sure we're cleaning out our food and knowing when we purchased it. So a helpful tip could be that when you have leftovers you're putting in the fridge, especially if you have roommates, grab a Post-it note, stick it on the lid of the Tupperware, and put the date that you made it right on there. You could also probably use a dry erase marker or something like that. It'll just help you to remember when you made the food and if it's still good to eat. I also use a menu so I remember what day I made different foods. So I just update my menu. I could always refer back to that. And like I said before, if you can't remember when you made something, probably just toss it out. It's probably been too long. All right, so if you have any food safety questions, you can always call the USDA Meat and Poultry Hotline, which I didn't know was a thing until recently. So that's really helpful. So if you're ever wondering if you should eat something or if you have any specific questions, they have a live chat or a phone number. So those resources are there for you. Let's do some quick info on meal planning.
It seemed like we never had enough time to actually make dinner,
We always ended up grabbing whatever we saw in the cupboard.
which rarely led to a good choice.
And if that didn't take care of it, Joanne or I would pick up the phone to order takeout, even if we had groceries in the fridge.
I'm embarrassed to say we had more than a few foods in the refrigerator go bad because we just didn't use them up.
It's not enough to buy healthy foods if you don't have a plan to use them.
For the last month, Phil and I have been making sure to create meal plans based on nutrition guidelines and food groups. There are 5 main food groups: fruits, vegetables, grains, dairy, and proteins. Foods that don't fit into these groups, like mayonnaise, candy, chips, baked goods, are considered extras and should be eaten in smaller amounts. We start by building menus around fruits and vegetables, then fill it in with whole grains, low-fat dairy, and lean protein sources.
This is a menu template. It's a very handy tool to help plan meals and snacks. All you do is fill in your choices for each meal and snack. A typical meal pattern is 3 meals and 1 to 3 snacks per day, depending on how active you are.
Starting with breakfast, we plan at least 3 of the 5 food groups. It's one of the easiest meals to include a dairy and a whole grain serving. Make sure to include a protein food like dairy, peanut butter, or eggs so the meal has staying power and you aren't hungry again right away.
One example is I will have a whole grain, like oatmeal. My dairy choice is fat-free milk, and my fruit, blueberries. Or I change it up, and for my whole grain, I have a slice of whole wheat toast with peanut butter as a protein and a banana as my fruit. You could change things up and replace any of these items with an item in the same food group and still have a balanced meal.
Lunch planning is important because you have to consider where it will be eaten. Are you going to eat it at home or take it to work? That helps determine which foods to include.
Also, consider if there is a refrigerator or a microwave available. If not, use a thermal lunch bag with an ice pack to keep lunch cold. If you have access to a microwave, bring your food in a microwave-safe container. Keep it cold until lunchtime, and then heat it up just before you eat it.
Plan 4 of the 5 groups for a balanced and filling lunch. One example is for whole grains, 2 pieces of bread. Our protein is sliced turkey. We can add low-fat mayo to add flavor to the sandwich and make it less dry. This is our extra. A vegetable can be a homemade vegetable soup in a microwave-safe container. Or another way to add vegetables is to add leafy greens and tomato slices to the sandwich. This may not count as a whole vegetable serving, but at least it's adding some vegetables. And finally, a dairy serving of yogurt.
Since we know that making dinner at home is better for us than eating out, we are trying harder to cook more at home. We share the cooking and cleanup chores. That way, we learn new skills and recipes together, so neither one of us is totally dependent on the other for dinner.
That's right. Plan for about 4 or 5 of the food groups. Think about color, texture, as well as whether the foods are hot or cold. We eat with our eyes first, so try to make the meal look really good so people want to eat it.
For example, let's plan vegetarian chili for dinner. A cold vegetable could be a side salad of leafy greens with cut up raw vegetables like carrots or cauliflower or whatever's in season. And the low-fat salad dressing is the extra. The chili itself is also full of vegetables. Tomatoes, onions, garlic, peppers, carrots, and celery are commonly found in chili recipes. We have kidney beans and pinto beans for the protein group. They are a good non-meat source of protein. The grain serving can be a hearty whole grain bread. A fruit, cubed mixed fresh fruit, and dairy, fat-free milk.
Notice how the cold fruit and vegetables add color and crunch to the meal. There are both hot and cold foods, making the meal more interesting.
If it will be more than 4 to 5 hours between meals, you should plan for 1 or 2 food groups for a snack. A good example is 1 food, an apple. 2 foods could be celery sticks and peanut butter.
Using this method of meal planning can help with grocery shopping, saving time and money, and reducing waste. Make sure to prepare a complete grocery list before you go to the store. When you're there, shop the sales and stock up on extra items like meat when it's on sale, but make a plan to use it up or freeze it.
Since most of our dishes are homemade instead of using processed foods, it's both an economical and a healthier way to eat.
And when it comes to protein, don't just rely on meat. Look at our vegetarian chili. It uses kidney beans and pinto beans for protein instead of meat. Try using other plant-based proteins like seeds or nuts. They're a healthier source of fats, protein, and iron, and usually less expensive than animal sources of protein.
Try store brands. They taste as good and have the same nutritional value. Unless they're on sale, name brands can be much more expensive.
Some of the best information to help make wise shopping choices is actually found right in the grocery store itself. Use label and shelf information, read the nutrition facts label, and the ingredients list on packaged foods. Compare the amount of fat, sodium, calories, and other nutrients in similar products. This can help you choose foods that have less fat, sodium, or calories, and more nutrients.
Use date information on packages. This will tell you how long you have to use the food items you buy.
If you don't have a plan to use it within that time, you should either plan to freeze it right away or don't buy it. When you throw food away, you're wasting money. Make sure to check the expiration date as opposed to the sell-by date. The sell-by date is for the grocer, and the expiration date tells the buyer when the food product loses quality, but the food may not be spoiled yet. Try to use the product before the expiration date. If a food has mold or other growth, changes color, or has a bad smell, don't serve or eat it. When in doubt, throw it out. Pay close attention to the expiration dates on fresh meat and dairy products. They have a shorter shelf life.
We already feel like we're eating better and saving money.
Once you know how to plan and shop for meals using nutritional information, it's easy to maintain your momentum and stick to your plan. You'll save money and eat healthier.
That was a great video with a lot of good tips. Let's talk quickly about grocery shopping. When you go to the grocery store, they're all a little bit different, but they have kind of the same layout where the produce, the seafood, meat, eggs, and dairy are all on the perimeter of the store. And what do you have in the aisles? Well, a lot of the processed and canned and bagged foods, all right? So we're gonna stay on the perimeter and try to get most of our foods as fresh foods from the perimeter. Definitely make a list when you're grocery shopping and don't shop hungry. I've made those mistakes before. You end up with way more food than you need and a lot of impulse buys. So if you stick to your list and make sure you go after a meal, ideally, you should be in good shape. Shop top to bottom for the best prices. That's important too. Sometimes you can get the store brand for quite a bit cheaper than the name brand, but they do put the expensive brands at eye level. So that's important and an easy way to save some money. As I know, shopping the perimeter is probably a little bit more expensive than some of the foods you can get in the main aisles. Obviously, I'm not saying you can't buy things from these main aisles. A lot of times you'll need them, ingredients from those to create recipes and to have quick choices, but it's good to have a balanced meal of all areas and not to spend most of your time in the aisles. It's important to consider the serving size too when you're prepping food or when you're having a snack, because I don't know if you've ever done this, but you know, you start eating potato chips and then all of a sudden there's half the bag gone when there's probably 8 servings in a bag. So then just because it says 170 calories doesn't mean that's what you just ate. It means that you ate, you know, a significant number more than that because you probably had a few different servings. So it's just something to consider that I like to pay attention to. A couple more tips on portion control. These are kind of like picture parts of your hands that can help you to determine a good serving size of different things. So a fist is about 1 cup, and that's good for rice, pasta, fruits or veggies. A palm is good for a meat serving, about 3 ounces. A handful is a little bit smaller, good for nuts or raisins. 2 handfuls, good for chips, popcorn, or pretzels. 1 thumb is good for peanut butter or a hard cheese, and a thumb tip is all you really need for sugar or mayo, butter, or cooking oil. So this chart is just a really good visual to help you make those choices without having to look at the label every single time. When you're cooking on your own at home, think about what appliances you're comfortable using on your own. And what foods you're comfortable prepping on your own. I know we were talking about knife safety a while back. Maybe you're not comfortable using a knife by yourself. That's okay. Think about some foods that you can make without using a sharp knife. Stay in your comfort level. Cooking is a skill that takes practice, and you always want to practice with family and staff and try new things on your own as you develop new skills. What resources do you have at your disposal to help with cooking and other independent living questions? Well, always YouTube. I use that all the time when I'm wondering about new recipes or how to cut a different kind of fruit or vegetable that I haven't done before. You can say really quickly, how do I cut a pineapple in YouTube, and get a ton of videos that will show you how to do it. Google, of course, good for recipes and instructions, might lead you right over to YouTube. Your team, your friends, and Pinterest. I love Pinterest for saving recipes. So I have different pin boards for breakfast and dinner and snacks and sides. So it's really great for recipes and learning and trying new things. Also, yeah, your network, asking other people for help. Let's do a quick run here now on loading and running your dishwasher. And if you were just here for cooking and food spoilage, you can log off now. But if you want a couple tips on loading and running your dishwasher, you can stay on for a few more minutes. Step 1 is to scrape off large chunks of food in the garbage, but you don't really have to pre-rinse your dishes in the sink. It wastes time, money, and water, so we just want the big parts of the food to be washed off. Load the top rack of the dishwasher with cups, glasses, and small bowls, and some plastic dishes are dishwasher safe and can go in the top rack. But before you do so, check the bottom for these 2 symbols, and those will tell you that it's dishwasher safe. The bottom rack can be loaded with larger dishes like plates and serving bowls. And when loading all your dishes, make sure they face the same direction. Most pots and pans are dishwasher safe and can go in the bottom rack, but you can check the bottom of your pans for symbols as well. Load your silverware in the silverware basket if you can. Face your knives downwards with the handle in the air. That's an important safety tip. Forks and spoons can be mixed up and some down. And you want to evenly disperse your silverware in the basket to ensure it all gets clean, and wait until your dishwasher is full before you start it. One more tip before you start your dishwasher, you want your water to be hot. So you could turn your hot water on your faucet and then start your dishwasher, and then turn the water off on your faucet. You just don't want your dishwasher to start with cold water. It's harder to get all the food off and harder for it to do its job. Step 5 is add your dishwasher detergent in the soap dispenser. Really important not to use regular dish soap. So there's different types of dishwasher detergent that come in pods or liquid, powder, tablet form. But don't put your Dawn or other liquid dish soap into the dishwasher. So okay, our pods. This is kind of a compact type of pod. Here's a powder. This is a gel or something you squeeze into there. We don't want to put any of these other options into the dishwasher. So it's just getting a little bit silly here with gasoline and orange juice. That's just a joke, but don't put your Dawn in there or your hand soap. That's going to end up with bubbles all over your kitchen. Step 6, make sure you close the door and make sure it locks. And push start on your dishwasher. Most dishwashers have options for you to choose like heavy wash or normal wash. Usually you can just stick with normal wash unless you have a pretty heavy duty load, I don't usually use that option, just kind of stick with normal. I also have a quick wash, which I use sometimes that goes in about 1 hour. Whereas my other ones, including the dry cycle, take about 3 hours. Step 8, pour yourself a cup of coffee and let your dishwasher do the work. This says your dishwasher will run for about 1 to 2 hours. Like I said, mine goes up to 3.5 hours, including the drying cycle. So it depends on your dishwasher. The final step is to unload your dishwasher. The dishwasher does get really hot when it's using hot water and using a drying element. So as a result, the dishes are really hot when they come out. So be sure to wait a few minutes before taking them out to avoid burning yourself. Usually I open up the dishwasher and let them dry for 10 minutes before I start putting them away. All right. Let's see here. Well, that is all I have for you today on kitchen and cooking safety and how to run your dishwasher. So I hope you learned something. I know everyone's coming in at different stages, and some of you might be pro chefs and some of you might be brand new to the kitchen. So happy to chat with you, and if you have any other questions, you can contact us here at Reach and we're happy to help. Thank you very much for joining me, and have a good rest of your day.